thank everyone for being here. This is our third senior project presentation today. And Nekoda is going to share about his project and offer some time for some questions and answers after. I think as Todd's explained, or you've already seen the forms before, but just to give Nekoda some feedback about presentation and all, we're also taping it, so you'll have that to work with help Nekoda with presentation skills. So, introduce your project, family, got family here. Introduce them to us as well.
Thank you. So right here in the light blue sweater is my grandma Anita, and then that's my grandpa Philip, and then the little guy over there is my little brother Nye, and that's my mom, and then my sister. So when Miss Todd, when I signed up for the senior project class, we had to choose from 40 hours, 80 hours, or 120 hours. And I needed 40 hours to fulfill graduation requirements. And so I had to decide on a project, and I asked Ms. Todd what project would be good to help out the CIS department. I wanted to be able to help them out for helping me and all this time here at HLG. So I chose to, first I needed to download ISOs from Microsoft Imagine. The second goal was to put the ISOs on the file share for other students that may need them. And then I started working on the network deployment server that Dugan started last year and didn't quite get finished all the way. And then we need to revamp the standalone deployment server that we use for the PC hardware students to image their computers so they learn how a network deployment or how a deployment server works. So first I had to go to Microsoft Imagine and download different ISOs and get them to the file share. So if you don't know what a file share is, it's basically a place that you can store different files and things like that on the network so that anybody that is connected to that network can access these files. So we have a file share in the lab where we can put ISOs, different files for different classes, and things like that. So first project I started with, of course, was getting the ISOs and adding them to the file share, and then I started working with the network deployment. As you can see in this picture here, this is our network closet, and this server here is the deployment server that we have in the lab that Dugan started. And so he started configuring the server, and it wasn't quite all the way done, so I needed to finish it up. And so I had to add, I added Microsoft 10, or not Microsoft, Windows 10, Windows 7, Hyper-V, and I think there's a couple more that I added to that to deploy images to different CIS users' computers in the lab. So whenever I went to, after I configured the servers for both the standalone and the network deployment server, I had to add install images and boot images. So right here's the picture of where you go in the server to add the boot image. So you click that, you right click on that, and you can add a boot image. And it's the same type of idea for the install image. And I'm going to show you here real quick exactly where those are when you download an ISO. Because when Ms. Todd, we were talking about the project, I really wasn't sure what those even were. So it was a good learning experience for me. So this here is a Windows 10 image. I practiced it in the lab, and I guess the software is not the same that I had on my, that we had with the lab and stuff. But if you go into the image, there's a file called sources. And you look into the sources and there's a big long list of files. And there's a boot.wim and a install.wim. And those are the two files you need to create a image to boot from a deployment server. So these are kind of the steps that I had to take to configure the standalone deployment server. First I had to configure it, and it's basically pretty simple. It walks you through step by step on how to, and you select your options. So for us, we wanted a standalone server for both the network and the standalone deployment server because we don't use Active Directory in our lab. We are all we don't have any like a domain to connect to. So we wanted the standalone option. And the next is the remote installation folder is where it's going to store your files and things. And usually you just set it to the default location. And so then after that, it prompted you with the Windows, or the Pixie, which is a pre-executable boot, which is what we use in our lab. And we wanted it to respond to all clients and computers that connected to it. So that way, it allowed the students to connect. It didn't like drop them or exit Pixie. And the next step was we had to add the roles to the server. And the roles that we wanted were Windows deployment services. We're creating a deployment server. Here's a more better picture, I guess. After you can either install an image or you can create a group to put all the images into one group. So for like our lab, I created an image group, just CIS, and put all the files into that. So it's all in one spot instead of being all spread out to save on space and things like that. And it's the same thing for the boot image. You select add boot image, and then this is where the window that you select where it's at. So you go to the sources file and then you find the boot.wim image. So after you get all that set up, you connect into the network. Plug in your cable into your computer, and when it boots up, it usually on the bottom gives you a little logo or a little icon that says press F12 for network boot. And when you press F12, this is what you get. It's connecting to Pixie, and then it's getting your MAC address and the IP address, and then it's going to download all the images and things from the deployment server that you created, you're connected to. And then after that, it loads up and you get a login screen, which I had to create a CIS user purposely for each deployment server. So you use deploy backslash and then CIS, and then we used our lab password that we use around for everything in the lab. And so you had to create a user to say that this person knows and has access into the deployment server. So the standalone deployment server, it is in lab 111, and it's on a rack. It's a server that's just sitting there, and you have your two monitors, your client and your server. And it's running Hyper-V on the server itself, and then or Hyper-V host, and then we're using Hyper-V Manager here, and we have two virtual machines. We have Windows Deployment Server, pfSense, which is a firewall and just a router that we use because we wanted the standalone to be on its own network. And I've talked with Jeremy a lot on this project because he's the one that originally worked on this project and got it going. And so, and then we have, I'm running server 2012 for the deployment server. So we had some problems whenever we went to do the standalone deployment server. First, I kept trying to add the images and it kept crashing. I don't know why it's crashing. Everything was fine. And so I tried it again and it crashed for a second time. So I got to looking and we realized that we were out of storage. Because we also, at the time, we also had a fog manager, which is a deployment for Linux images. And so we really didn't need that because there's not too many people in the lab that uses Linux. I know, Brian, you're heartbroken by that. So we decided, I talked with Ms. Todd and Jeremy gave me some ideas as well, to go ahead and delete the fog manager because we don't use it and it's not really helping us out and create more storage. So then I had to recreate the virtual machine because the one that was on there, whenever I went to delete the images off of it, it shrunk this disk space. So then I didn't have enough storage on it to add the new images. So I created a new server, a virtual machine, basically. So any questions?
What does ISO stand
It's a. I knew someone was gonna ask this, and I even. It's like it's a image. Basically, it's like a compressed image of your operating system.
What was the hardest part of the project?
I'm not real good with like PFSense. We started working on it in advanced networking this semester, so I just kind of started working on it a little bit, and so I wasn't real sure about it. So I talked with Jeremy, and Jeremy helped me out quite a bit with how to navigate it and work it all.
I liked how you picked your project because you wanted to help the IS department. And so how was this beneficial to them?
So our standalone deployment server, each year whenever there is PC hardware, they create their own machine and then they take it into the lab and they connect to the deployment server and learn how the deployment server works and get to deploy their Windows or whatever image they want, well, Windows image. And then they take that back to the lab space. And so then, if for some reason later on down the road, junior year, senior year, something happens to their computer and they need to redo Windows on it, they can now plug into our network and deploy an image right there from their desktop, like right there from their lab space, instead of having to unplug everything from their computer, plug it up there, and plug it in and wait for the updates, and then take it back to their lab space. They can just plug it in right there at their desk, boot into the network deployment server, and then they can leave and go home for the night or do whatever while it boots and all that installs.
Is there a lot of reason to use that in our lab?
I think it definitely would benefit because I know this semester my computer crashed just before midterms, and so I had to get a USB and plug it in and boot it, and it'd just be so much easier to, I mean, you're already plugged into the network, so all you have to do is restart your computer and get into the network.
You said you wanted to help, we want to help people learn how to use a deployment server. Is that something that is used in the industry?
Yes, both of my internships, the one here we use a deployment server. There's more like in OCS it's more of like a standalone, because it's right there, you don't really deploy from the network. And then this summer at Quincy Public Schools they had a network deployment server that I used a lot. We had to re-image every teacher laptop in the district this summer, so it's used quite frequently.
Why did you have to go to that Microsoft Imagine again?
The CIS department pays for a subscription to it, so all students have access to different software and different things like that. And so that was the easiest way to get the ISOs for this project.
What was the biggest takeaway in this project?
I would say getting to work like with the servers. I didn't have much experience with servers before, so being able to work with servers was a big takeaway for me because a lot of things are going virtual now in the businesses.
So are you saying working with the server was a good thing, or that you were working with the virtual servers on the server was a good thing, or what are you-
Both. I mean, working with servers was a good thing, and working with virtual machines on the servers because it's used frequently in businesses now.
I see. So how many hours did you work on this project?
I would say I logged 40, but 35 hours. I had a networking project this semester, and Ms. Todd let me use 5 hours from that into this project to count towards this project because it was a pretty big project for our lab. So I was able to use 5 hours from that. So overall 40 hours.
Without going into too much detail, what was that 5-hour project you got to count?
We redid the patch panel in our closet. Not too long ago, Jeremy redid our whole network and organized everything. And our patch panel was a little outdated, and if something broke on it, you couldn't just pop out the jack and replace it. It was just dead. You couldn't use it anymore. And so we wanted to upgrade the patch panel to Keystone jacks. And so that was my advanced networking project for the semester. Any other questions? And also, if you want to see the network deployment server working, I have it set up and ready in the CIS lab if you want to take a look at that.
What improvements do you think would be helpful for those going forward?
Definitely the standalone deployment server is getting a little outdated, and we're running it. We don't have much storage on it. So definitely in the future, maybe thinking about upgrading that because it's a big part to how the freshmen learn. Big part of PC hardware.
So, do you agree that all CIS students should have a project like this that they're in charge of?
Absolutely. Like Dugan said in the last presentation, last year at this time, probably I would have said no, because I didn't want to get up here and talk. But now that I've done it, I think definitely, I don't wear a suit every day, for sure. And like Brian said, this is the most he's seen me dressed up for a while. So definitely gives you an experience that you won't forget.
Have they used the deployment server in the lab?
Yes, there's a few people that have. I know for the PC hardware test, Nathan used it to deploy an image and not deployed an image, testing it. And I think there's probably one other student that's used it.
I just hadn't heard if anybody used the standalone yet.
I don't think anybody has used it yet.
Yeah, well.
But that's part on me because I didn't have it done before they got their PCs built. Is there any other questions? Well, thank you all again for taking time out of your evening to come and listen to me.
If you'll take time to fill this out and give him some feedback that will help him improve, and then we'll collect those papers if you bring them to us. And then you're welcome to go with Nekoda down to the lab and take a look at his creation if you'd like to see it up close and personal, or if you'd like to visit. And certainly family members, please feel free to look around the lab and see where he's spent many hours learning, and we're glad that you could come.